Okay, so picking up where we left off, we have the our character, we have our contact, our passing, our other contact, our other passing, and our final contact. This final contact is, again, pretty much the same pose as we had on frame 10. It's just offset forward 2 steps. And so we're going to add now is we're going to add our down pose and our up pose to each side of those. And that should give us all of our poses, and then we'll go in and refine that a little bit. After we've refined it, we'll duplicate these a couple of times to get our repeating look. Okay, so let's go ahead and start here. The next thing I'm going to do is my down pose. For my down pose, I like to flatten this foot out. So usually zero out that, zero out that. And let's see what that looks like in a single step. Looks pretty good. Doesn't really look like it's sliding too much, right? But I also want this to look very similar, if not exactly the same, as the following pose. Right? So see how that slides forward a little bit. That's maybe a little too much. And so because of that, maybe I'll actually take, because what I have there on 13 maybe isn't exactly right. Maybe I'll just take what I have on 16 and put on 13. Right? And so now that looks like the character flattening out, but we're getting some weird knee bend there. So I'm going to go ahead and push my character down, because that is why we call this the down pose. This is where the character is absorbing the impact and the weight from this step forward, right? And so they kind of fall into that pose. I don't want to go forward too much. I just want it to be enough to where our character is going down. Okay, and then on this back foot, I'm going to have this back foot sort of push off a little bit from behind. So maybe a little bit like this. Okay, and then let's select everything and hit S. So now we have that up to that. Okay, so I'm going to go to my other down pose here, and as you see, we're getting some of that information already. The character's already trying to flatten that foot out, but it seems like it worked pretty well to still from 28, so I'll still that again for that foot. And so now that foot goes completely flat. And what I want is my character to dip down, maybe go forward just a touch, just a little bit. And again, this back foot is going to push off behind us, maybe up a little bit. And then the toe is going to kick back. So if we watch for that, see, it feels like it kind of pushes off on the ground behind her. I think in this case I want my character to dip just a touch more. Now it may also be that the character could be raised just a touch more here, but in this case probably not. Okay, and so now it looks like the character pushes off with this back foot, lands on this front foot, and follows through with that push. Right? So I'm going to select everything, again make sure that I have a keyframe on all of these before I go to my up pose. Now my up pose is going to be the one that I have a reasonable percentage of stuff done for me already. Like this looks pretty close to what we want for the up pose. We're just going to have to push it a little bit more. So I'm going to push my character up to the highest extent I can get them. Okay, and this should be the highest point in your walk cycle. So I go up a little higher than that. And then sometimes I'll also raise my foot a little just to give us a little bit more height that we can go, right? And angle my foot a little bit to where I can get like the character's up on their toe, right? Now in this case you see that my foot feels like it's sliding back a little bit. I'm not a huge fan of that, so I'm going to scoot that forward a little bit more. So it still feels like it slides back a little bit from 16 to 19. So we go forward a little bit more. There we go, that's feeling a little bit better. And that gives me even more room to push the character up. Right? And so I can pull this knee up. So in the front leg, what is actually happening is the character has to get this foot out there in front of them to catch themselves because they're falling forward. Right? So we have the character kind of throw their leg forward in this pose. So this is like kind of throwing their foot forward to get it out there in front of them to catch. Right? Okay, and so that's pretty much everything on that pose. So let's go do the opposite pose. Again, we're a good portion of the way there as it is. Let's go ahead and hit S just to nail everything down. And we'll look at the placement on this foot. So it kind of slides back a little bit. You can see that. And so I'm going to fix that, push it forward, push it up a little bit. Maybe roll back on that toe a touch more. And then I can push this character's height up even more. So maybe something like that. Let's see if that feels like it goes up. So it's not really feeling much higher than it was on our passing, does it? Maybe I'll drop my passing just a touch. So I want that to go up even higher. So to do that, again, let's make sure that foot's not sliding. It's sliding a touch, so I'll pull it back. That gives us a little bit more room there. I could probably also raise it up a little. This is probably going to make it look like it's sliding a touch again. I'll have to readjust. So you see how that kind of feels like it's sliding a little bit. Get it back in there to its position. There we go. And now I can push that up even higher. Get my character even a little bit more height on that. And again, I'm going to set this foot like it's kind of throwing forward to catch itself, or to catch the character. That may be a little bit too much, just sort of blowing through the skirt. Right. So a little bit more like this. Play with the toe a little bit. And so at this point, I think I've keyed everything. Let's see what this looks like kind of right, as it is. So that's not too bad. We're seeing a couple weird little things in there. Like I see a little bit of a hitch where my foot slides back at the very end there. Do you see that? Like from this pose to this pose, that back foot slides back. Let's see if there's any other spots where that feels like that's happening. Does it do it there? So on this one, it feels like those feet slide back just a touch, right? And so that means I could probably play around with the placement of this foot in between these two. I could just slide that forward a touch more. See if that fixes it. Or vice versa. Maybe what I need to do is slide this foot back. So that feels a little bit better there. But then on that one, that's a big slide. And so what I'm going to do, since it's just one keyframe at the very end, I'm going to slide the whole pose forward just a touch more so it doesn't look like it's quite sliding as much. Now again, yours, you may end up having a completely different set of issues on yours. All right. Forward just a touch more. There we go. But this is just me making sure all my contacts look pretty good on the ground, right? And so now that's all looking like they're kind of hitting the floor and sticking pretty well. Okay, once I have this, there's a couple of things I usually do to make this better. I'll go through my curves in my graph editor just to kind of fix anything that's a major issue, right? Something that I'm going to see in other parts of the animation. So my translate X, I can sort of frame that up, and for the most part, this looks all right. We can still make some changes to it. Maybe that's a little too high or whatever. I'm just going to kind of go through it. My up and down, that looks all right. This is my translate Z. This is my forward and back. And you'll see a few spots where it feels like the character kind of lunges a little bit, and so maybe it would even that out a little bit. I'm just playing with this to see if I'm getting sort of some consistent motion. So this is my character's twist, and you'll see that's kind of a consistent wave, right? And then on this one, that's not bad. So again, we can look at a lot of different things like the foot. So this is my translate, my rotate Y. And what you'll see is that rotate Y there seems a little off. If we go forward to that, what I think it's wanting, or what I think would work a little bit better, is if we just bent that back just a touch more, or vice versa, pulled this forward a little bit, just sort of even that curve out a little bit, and that's just going to seem a little more smooth. This is stuff that we would never actually see, but the collective of going through it and fixing all of these little things will make it something that will feel better, even though we don't recognize why we can't pinpoint it and be like, oh, that foot rotates back correctly. It will feel more accurate to us when we watch it. And so it's a lot of work to go through here and comb through all these curves, but it's still a pretty important part of the process to just make sure stuff works all right. I see something right here where the foot really isn't rotated back very far there, right? But it's rotated back pretty far there. And so just sort of playing around with that a little bit. I don't know, that's interesting. Maybe it goes back a little too far. Maybe not. I don't know, I like how that looks, so I'm not gonna mess with it too much. But we're just using this curve to spot little anomalies like this and treat them. Okay, so once we have all of that, what we're going to do is, we have this full cycle of this character, right? And what we're going to do is we need to repeat that 2 more times, and then we need to bring the character to a stop. So we currently have the character starting from a rest position and going into this walk cycle, and then when they get to the end, I just want to repeat that walk cycle out there again a few times. The problem with that is if I were to copy this first keyframe, or copy this next keyframe here, right, the next down, and paste it out here, right, so I'm middle click dragging, I'm just middle click, I drag it out to here, and hit S, it's going to pull I didn't have the whole character selected. Let's do that again. Middle click, drag out here. It's going to pull the whole character back to the beginning, right? So what I want to do instead is I want to highlight, and I want to show you this too. Another way of doing that is right clicking, and I can say copy, and then I can right click out here and say paste, and you'll see in paste we have 2 different types of paste. So if I just say paste, it'll do the exact same thing that we just did. Okay, but if I did paste connect, it's really weird. It doesn't seem to change it very much, right? So what is actually happening is it's taking all of those keyframes that I had selected and pasting them at the same relative location as the previous frame from where I'm pasting it, right? So that may not make sense, but what I'm going to do is I'm going to grab all of this, I'm going to say copy, and then I'm going to click on this very last frame here on 34, and I'm going to say right click, paste connect. And what that's going to do is it's going to paste that entire animation at the location that we have here. And so now it's just going to continue walking after that. So I can do that again, paste connect. The whole animation is there. Right? And then again, I can just sort of bring this character to rest, or I can... What I'm going to do is, at about 96, I'm just going to middle click and drag this all the way out here to 90. Let's do something more like, 96 is, let's do 94. And so what's going to happen is we get to the end of this, and it's just going to zoom back there. And so I'll just move that out here to the end of my walk cycle. Let's see how close we are. Oh, that's pretty close. Let's see. That feels a little better there. Okay, now my character just sort of ends there at that point. Okay, so we're almost done with setting our keyframes. I'm going to do a couple more things because the beginning here and the end just sort of blend into that final pose. And I want to make this look a little bit better, right? So what I'm going to do is go ahead and flatten some of this out. There we go. Excuse me, I'm a little sniffly today. Okay. So again, select everything. I'm just going to treat this as a full key pose, right? As if the character were sort of pushing themselves into this final pose, very similar to the up pose, maybe. Or maybe not quite the up pose, but the character pushing themselves up, kind of getting this leg forward a little bit more, right? There we go. I'm going to put a little bit of my weight over this other leg, right, like that. Okay, we got that. And then my next pose here, I'm going to go ahead and get that foot kind of in its final resting place. There we go. And that's going to give our character sort of a few frames to sort of settle in that. Make sure we keyed everything on these. And actually, I'm going to do one more key pose out here on the end. Oh, I did not mean to do that. I'm going to do one more keyframe out here on the end. Or just give it a little bit more settle time. So I'm basically just going to hit S. And if I look at what my character is doing, they kind of settle over, right? But then just kind of hits this wall and stops. So I'm going to give her just a little bit more time to kind of settle in this direction. Just a little nudge, right? And so now when she settles, it just feels like it kind of eases to a stop a little bit more. So, right. So there's a couple of little things that I like to work on. And actually I could have done some of this previously, but I'm going to go ahead and do it now. One of the things I like is I like the foot to kind of go flat faster. So right here it kind of, let's look at our first pose. From frame 10 to 12, this foot takes 3 frames to go flat. Oh, I'm sorry, before I do that, let's go ahead and get the character started as well. So right now they just kind of drift off. So I'm going to do a little bit of a weight push, kind of keep that foot there for a frame or two. Do a little bit of pushing your weight off to your side, right? Just maybe up on this leg a little bit more. We could even sort of go up, like this character is going up on their toe a little bit. Okay, so now I feel like the character kind of pushes themselves up, and then I want to go ahead and have a pose where this character is kind of raising their foot a little bit more. Now in this previous pose, I want this foot to stay exactly as it is on frame 1. So let's go ahead and select everything. This, make sure we got keys on there. So 1 to 4, I want that key to not really move, and then that's all right there, what it does. I like this kind of moving up, dragging forward. It's very similar to the up pose, right? Give our character a chance to shift their weight up, like they're stepping into this first pose, right? There we go. So I'm alright with that. Okay, so the last thing I'm really going to do in here before I start sort of looking at my curves again is my foot goes flat here over 3 frames. I want that to happen just a touch faster. I want it to happen over 2 frames, so it happens again here. It just gives it a little bit more weight. In the process of doing that, though, it may mess a little bit of something up in the knee. Right now it doesn't really seem like it is, but it could. So I'm not going to sweat that too much. And then the last one is right there, and that one's way too slow. So let's just pull it back way early here. Okay, and you'll see that in that one the leg does go a little bit too flat. And so what we may do is just need to get the hips up there a little earlier. Just get the, there we go. Okay. And I've done that on that foot. Now I'll do it on this foot. Everywhere where that foot goes flat. So it looks like the first time is right here. Right there. Let's see if it's really affecting it. Not too bad. And then right here I think is the last one. No, I think there may be one more after this. Right there. Okay. So let's see how that looks now. Not bad. Excuse me. So I could spend a lot more time in the graph editor at this point, but that's kind of boring to watch, so I'm not going to make you sit through that. But I would say that this is definitely not 100% finished. It could still use a little bit more work in the graph editor on all of these curves. But the last thing I want to show you how to do is we're going to put a camera in here and animate that. So I'm going to create a camera. And it creates it over here, sort of at our origin point. So I want to look to that camera and sort of set up my framing for the first shot, or for the first frame. So I'm going to click here so I get my framing window. Right? Maybe start at something like this. Right? And so if I select the camera and hit S, I've set a keyframe on camera 1's location. So now I can just go to the end, kind of frame this up again, right where I want this to be. So maybe a little bit more like this. Right. Okay. There we go, and hit S again. And so now we have this camera animation here. Right? Now there's a few spots where I really feel like we're getting a little too close here. So I'm going to go about halfway in the middle and kind of pull out just a little bit more bias, a little bit more room. Hit S. Let's see what that looks like. Some more spots here where we're kind of cutting our feet off, so maybe just a little bit more. I'm not doing anything too drastic to it. Right? Maybe that could have been a little bit more even. Maybe it's more like here is where we need. There we go. Let's try deleting that one now. See what that looks like. There we go. So I'm just setting a few keyframes. I don't want to overdo it, because if I overdo it, I'll really see that motion. So the last thing I want is like the character kind of comes to a stop there, but my camera doesn't reach the end point until here. So I'm just going to get really close to the end of that, like 98, right? And then I'm going to middle click drag that back to something like 82. And hit S. And what that's going to do is it's going to get to most of that end pose kind of early and kind of settle in there. And so now if we watch this all the way through and see what we have, not too bad. So what I would probably do at this point is play blast this out just to make sure you're not seeing any hitches in your motion. Again, to play blast, you go right click, play blast. You can choose your options box there. But hopefully that'll let us see any anomalies before we render it, or any hitches in the motion. So, hope that was helpful. Let me know if you have any questions, and I'll talk to you soon. Bye.